Good evening, and welcome to Doc and Sock. Well, the new name of the show could be Doc, Sock, and Doris, DSD. Doris is on the line, and she missed our show on Thursday, and so she is back with us this evening, and we're glad to have her. Now, we're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, the heart of the Deep South, ground zero, Mississippi, the birthplace. This is where the struggle began, this is where the struggle continues, and this is where the victory shall be won. Right here in Mississippi. So goes Mississippi, so goes the rest of the country. You know, we can't go anywhere but upward, because we are on the bottom in most categories, and for a reason that we cannot articulate, because we're blessed with some of the most fertile land in the country, the Delta, the Mississippi Delta, Arkansas, Alabama. The guy's the most fertile land in the world, and back in the day of the great plantations, this is where the wealth was made. This is where all of the wealth was generated. This is where the farmers would come in, and after the harvest, and they would roll into the Peabody Hotel up in Memphis, Tennessee, and the King Edward Hotel in Jackson, Mississippi, and parade all of the great wealth. There were more millionaires in Mississippi than anywhere else in the country. Of course, that's during the days when cotton was king and slaves were plentiful. So you could be a millionaire today, too, if we gave you free labor. And so we're going to have to atone for that. And this show is designed to bring you relevant information about our history, because never again, we won't go back. We have to talk about it. You can't teach it in the public schools, so we're going to teach it here in the broadcast studio. You can't talk about the critical race theory in Mississippi nor in Alabama. And so we got to talk about it here, and because we have to correct history so that our children will have self-esteem and have a pride and a feeling of accomplishment of the mighty things that were done before them, so that they'll know how high we set the bar, how high we set the standard. We don't have a low standard. We believe in excellence in every way. And we were the hardest working, most productive people that this country has ever known. Now, we're going to talk about those things right here at We Believe Digital Broadcasting Studio. Now, if you're watching us on Facebook, we want you to share this program with your friends and family. Send us stars. Tell everybody you meet to go to Facebook and go to We Believe Digital Podcast and join this show. Call in at 800-492-5186. Put it in the chat box below, so that we can get back to you. Now, if you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to our program. It's critically important. We need you to subscribe. We need to increase our viewing hours there so that we finalize the last leg of the monetization program with YouTube. It's critically important to us that we do that. We have all of the subscribers that we need. We have all of the shows, the number of shows that we need. We have 3,000 shows in the archives right now, and so we just need to increase the viewing hours. Now, we realize your attention span is short. Therefore, we post our clips and reels on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, so that you'll find snippets, and then maybe if we pique your interest, then you'll come and watch the rest of the show with us. We'd love to have you do that. Now, if you're watching us on WeBelieveDigital.com, our very own platform, You know, it's not a page, it's a platform, and we are revamping that platform as we speak. Looking forward to having shows like The Table in our playlist, having shows like finance and banking in our playlist, sports in our playlist, so that you'll have a variety of things to see when you come to that platform. That's our goal, and we're well on our way to accomplishing that. Now, as always, I have my co-host in the studio with me, a man that needs no introduction, a man that was born on a plantation in the Mississippi Delta. No, I have to keep saying that because the odds of him being successful in achieving were against him. From that start point, he that enters the race last normally remains behind, unless he can run faster or someone else slows down. Well, we know that those that are enjoying all of the largesse of first-class citizenship in America is not going to slow down. We know that, and that's what the wars are about in Israel and Palestine and Ukraine and Russia. It's all about largesse, the spoils, who gets the spoils, and we say to the victor goes the spoils. And so we got to be careful with that. So this man on the Mississippi Delta to overachieve and become Dr. Eldridge Henderson is a monumental achievement. Booker T. Washington said, "It's not the heights that you obtain, but the depths from which you came." And while Haley Barbour and others said that black folk ought to just pull themselves up by their own bootstraps, they ought to hitch up to their britches and raise themselves up from that devastation start that they had in the beginning, it's cruel. It's just plain cruel. And so we got to look at that. And Martin Luther King put it in the best terms. He said, how can a bootless man pull himself up by his bootstraps when he doesn't even have boots? And so we're going to talk about the conditions of African Americans throughout this country. But as always, Dr. Henderson, it's good to have you in the studio. How have you been?
Well, I've been doing fine, sir.
Wonderful, fine. Wonderful.
Now, let me tell you something, sir.
Tell me something.
You're always talking about that bad life that I had on that plantation. Don't you know that was one of the best things that ever happened to me? That experience was such a great experience. Negatively, it said, until I told myself when I was about 5 years old, man, I got to get out of this hell of situation one way or the other. And even at that early age, I knew something was wrong with it, but I didn't know what. But it just appeared that I was just working too much. You know, when you're a child and you're working, have full-time jobs at 5 years of age, 18 hours a day almost, including that little 30 minutes or so that we were studying at night, going to bed, getting up, working all the time. That was a great stimulation for me to say, I got to get better, got to do better. So you talk about people having the good thing going for them, plantations versus own property like you had. Man, I must say, who is doing better?
Wow.
The plantation owner or the man that had his own land?
Wow. Well, Doc, I'm glad that you gave that speech, that you say that you were motivated by the negativity that you were experiencing in life, and that then you say something really remarkable, that you didn't know exactly what was wrong as a little boy, but you knew something was wrong.
That's right. I just couldn't understand why we had to work all the time, and then you ask dad, mom for 15 cents or a nickel, and they didn't have it, but he would find a quarter on Saturday night somewhere, and he'd give us a nickel apiece to go to church, give mom a quarter, and give the kids a nickel. And we had to break that nickel into 5 pennies and put 1 penny each in 3 or 4 selections, and if we had anything left, we'd stop by the store and give that to the white man.
Wow, wow. What an experience. We're going to talk about that, but today you have arrived and you have beat the odds, and you're here tonight as Dr. Eldridge Henderson. We're going to go to our Chicago correspondent, the young lady that moves around. I don't ever know if she's in Mississippi or Illinois or Tennessee, but she added so much to the dialogue and the conversation, and she's really set some high standards. You know, Doris, I want you to introduce yourself to the audience. And you know, when you and I were talking, you told me about some of your experiences having been told to shut up and terminated based upon the fact that you would not cow down, that you would speak your mind and things of that nature. Speaking your mind has gotten you in a lot of trouble. So how have you been, young lady?
Oh, I'm fine, but tonight I'm in Biloxi, Mississippi. I'm on the Gulf Coast tonight. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, he can hear.
Hello.
You. And
Yeah.
she's.
Okay, so I'm on the Gulf Coast tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, but you know, I was just thinking about what Doc was saying, and that is, you know, I just think the Creator puts that in us, puts something in us, even as children, to know when something is wrong. The things that Doc experienced, the things that I experienced when I was growing up. I knew that it was wrong. I knew that in Jackson, Mississippi, even though we didn't suffer or hurt from it, but I knew that to have a water fountain for whites and a water fountain for blacks, I knew that was wrong. You know, and we question, well, why do they have a water fountain that says white and a water fountain that says black when it's water? And every human being has a right to water. So you know that. You don't understand what's behind it, but you know that it's wrong. And I mean, that's how I think all of my life is early as 10 or 12 years old. You know, I knew segregation in terms of how they were mistreating us. The segregation was wrong. But as Doc said, growing up on that plantation, it wasn't all bad. He learned. It was an experience. It helped him to get where he is today. Growing up in Jackson, Mississippi, segregation was not the worst thing that happened to us. Segregation gave me the foundation that I have. I was truly raised by a village. And so it protected me from all of the Klansmen and all that racism and white supremacy that was going on in Mississippi, and that's still going on in Mississippi and the world today. But it prepared me to be the kind of person that I am today. It gave me the strength, and I made a decision at an early age that, you know what, just because you're white, you're no better than I am. I was never intimidated by these people. I really didn't care. Because again, I was in this little segregated community that embraced me, that loved me, that gave me my foundation. This is where I got my political views, my social views, my economic views. So it was very positive. It was the Northerners who made segregation so ugly. But the North was just as segregated as the South. And we found that out when they first renovated the schools in Boston, Massachusetts, and those white people literally lost their minds up there. So, that's why I always say we have to define our own narrative. We cannot allow people to define our narrative, and that's what we've done most of our lives. So we've got to change that.
And we will change that, Doris. And so we're going to move right into some of the issues. I'd like to talk about the President Biden's State of the Union. And if you had an opportunity to listen to him, I want to know if there was anything in the speech that was specifically geared toward African Americans and the great contribution, reciprocity for the work that we've done on his behalf. Did you hear anything in his speech, Doc, that says that he was going to address that issue?
No, not one word.
Not one word.
I didn't hear anything. No, that were significant that he said about black people. Black people are not important in America anymore. I've been telling you and others, the people that are important are the new black people called immigrants that's coming from Latin America, Ukraine, and all those other places. All these people are going to be declared white before December the 31st, 2029. I've been telling you for some time that blacks will be relegated to the fringes of this so-called democracy here in America. And we are not going to even be considered an outcast anymore. We're just going to be neglected and forgotten unless we do some things between now and December the 31st, 2029, by doing the same thing I've been advocating, pooling your resources, creating new leaders, registering and voting. And I'm not talking about those that's already registered and voting. That's only 25 to 35%. Get those new people, which I will explain later on, and that's the only way we're going to get out of this chaos we're in, by creating new people, new ideas, and have a new man. And black folks then will rise to the point where they're supposed to be.
We're going to come back to the new man concept because I want you to elaborate on that. Doris, did you hear anything in the State of the Union that you got excited about that we can look forward to?
Well, I did not listen to it, and I purposely did not listen to it, but I did scan, the internet today and looking at various things that he said. He did not say one thing about black people. I didn't expect that from Joe Biden. Look at Joe Biden is the one who opened the borders and allowed all of these illegal economic immigrants come into this country for the sole purpose of replacing us. And we have a golden opportunity, as I've always thought we had a golden opportunity. But this is an opportunity for us to change the paradigm, for us to come up with our own narrative, and just like Doc said, pool our resources. We spend $1.3 trillion a year in this country. 90% of it, 99% of it goes to everybody but us. So we have the means, we have the expertise, we have everything we need to turn our condition around in this country. Wherever you have a large percentage of black people, we've just got to come up with this plan, come up with an agenda, put some new faces of these people out there who will push this agenda. And Mr. Socrates, black media is the most powerful thing that we have going now, because mainstream media does not cover us anymore. They pushed us out of the picture, and that's okay. That's okay. So it's an opportunity for us to use black media to promote our agenda and tell the people the truth. What has been missing for too long? Black people are not being told the truth about what is going on in this country. We are still under this system of racism and white supremacy, and we have to continue to discuss it. We are afraid to discuss it. We must discuss it. We must get our children, the young children, and our future to understand that we're still under this system, but it doesn't mean that we cannot be successful.
Now, Doc, Doris said a mouthful. Now, should black folks consider voting in the Republican Party? And Doc, I want you to keep in mind the way that Tim Scott is being treated, and the black lieutenant governor that's running for governor in North Carolina. They are really being ostracized by black folk and saying that they are Uncle Toms. And so it's difficult for a black person to say we're going to consider an alternative to the Democratic Party. In your opinion, should blacks consider that alternative?
Of course they should. Blacks should never vote for one party. Blacks should always vote for any party they choose. And in this situation, you only have two significant parties, and blacks should be voting this time around up to 25 to 30% in the Republican Party. And they should demand certain things from both the Democrats and Republicans. And just to give you a summary here, I say the so-called leaders, and we talked about this before the show, should be demanding from both parties that we get 3 Supreme Court justices. The president has 4,500 federal appointments that he can make without Congress approval. Need to demand we get 1,500 of those. They are good positions, from $79,000 to $255,000 a year. We need 30 to 40 federal judges and at least 150 federal attorneys that's going to be representing the federal government interests in the various states, and many other state directors. Those numbers should be publicized, given to both parties, and then in areas where we in the majority again, we change the vote in pattern by registering people that's not registered and making sure they're on a voting roll and contact them at least once a week prior to voting. And this should be a continuous thing. And one of the things that can change the city of Jackson and any other city with all these non-voters in these colleges, senior colleges and community colleges in Hinds County. A new mayor could come here that's not even known today and not announce that he's going to run for mayor, and you know that's just going to be real soon, and register the college students as Hinds County citizens, get the hundreds and thousands that are not even registered, and then find that 70% that's registered that don't vote, and they could then announce, once they get themselves together, and they could be the new mayor in Jackson. They could be the new supervisor in Hinds County, and not only in Hinds County in the city of Jackson, in almost any other city in Mississippi and many other states.
Wow.
New man, that's that new concept.
The new man. Now, Doris, this is the election year for the mayor in the city of Jackson, as well as the presidential election, of course. You know, the election for the mayor will occur next year in 25, but everybody is running in 24. And so we have a list of candidates that are surfacing here. Now, the mayor of Jackson, the Honorable Chokwe Lumumba, has done a good job of fighting for Jackson when it comes to the takeover of the water department, and it comes to fending off the takeover of the airport in Jackson, Mississippi. But many think that he is failing and trailing in the polls currently this evening. So do you think the mayor's being given a fair shake here? Has he done a good enough job to be reelected, or is he ripe for upcoming defeat?
Well, I think right now he is the only person that I think can move Jackson forward. He has spent most of his time putting out fires in Jackson, and he has not fully had the support of that council. He has been fighting them relentlessly. They have been attacking him from every direction. So, I mean, with the water crisis, he handled it. But I don't think anyone else could have handled it as best as he did. So, if he had the support of that council, things would have been a little easier. You know, that's still a serious problem today, and all of the other things that are going on in Jackson. I think he's done a masterful job, and it would have been better had he had the support of the full council, but he did not do it. Now, I've said this before: black people, black politicians will attack one another, but they will not attack Tate Reeves. Tate Reeves has taken hundreds of millions of dollars from the city of Jackson. Jackson is missing the resources that it needs in order to function as a city. They should be criticizing this governor 24/7, but they are afraid to do that. And this is very typical of us. And we talk about jumping on these people who are running on the Republican Party who don't have an agenda for black people, but the Democrats don't have an agenda for black people. What agenda does Benny have for Jackson and the state of Mississippi regarding black people? What do those city councilmen have? What kind of vision or agenda or plan do they have for black people? So you cannot criticize the ones who are running on the Republican ticket and not criticize the Democratic Party. You just said Joe Biden did not say one thing about black people who are responsible for him being in office. We're not criticizing him. We cannot push the same nonsense on our young people. We've got to show them a different direction. We have a responsibility to guide these young people, but we are afraid to criticize these black politicians. In Chicago, this mayor is literally selling black people out. They're running black people off the land. They're giving these people, I mean, as much money as they need to function. Chicago has spent almost $500 million on illegal immigrants in the city of Chicago. So we cannot allow black politicians to continue to lie to the people and not represent the people who elected them to those positions. We have to call all of them out. And if we're not going to do that, then we need to just shut up.
Now, Doc, I don't think we can shut up. I think that the citizens have spoken. In your last election, in your Hinds County Board of Supervisors, you have a 5-member board down there, and you had 2 of the independents, of the incumbents, to be defeated, to be replaced. And so blacks voters are speaking loud and clear that they're not happy with the performance that our elected officials are given. And so why did those people get unelected?
Well, they got unelected clearly because of their ill participation in a positive manner in their representation for their constituents. There was a lot of confusion in those first few years when they had the previous guys that lost their positions. There was so much confusion and internal politicking until they were just like the city of Jackson, people studying and planning for positions that they didn't quite deserve. When you first get in office, you shouldn't try to be the president of anything when you first get a new position. You need to do your study before you run for the position, and then at least give yourself a year before you try to get the top position. Matter of fact, you shouldn't try to get the second position after the first 6 months or so in office. You usually find that when one is well trained before they're elected, have studied the issues and looked at the last 10 years, specifying the issues that they had to address the previous years before they got in office, they could come in with a plan. And that's what I advise all the people that I've been talking to for the last 15 or 30 years before they decide to run for office. Right now, we're consulting with some political candidates that's going to be announcing that they are running for mayor. We're not going to call any names. And that's exactly what we're telling those folks. You don't announce until you do certain things. And I'm not going to talk about that right now. But sometimes you have to get your position together before you announce, get your money together, and then be prepared to let these insurgents that the Democrats and the political opposition, the Republicans, don't have in Hinds County, in the city of Jackson, that they are paying to run for these positions. They usually pay 3 or 4 to run for mayor, run for supervisor's position, knowing they're not going to win, but that takes off anywhere from 5 to 3 to 7% off the vote. And then their person that they really want to get in will then be in a runoff at least. And everyone that's new, that replaces an incumbent, is not necessarily the best candidate to replace that person.
Now, I made a mistake. 60% of that board got turned out.
Yeah, that's right.
Three out of five got turned out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we hold that logic, Doris, we're saying council people with their elections coming up, we could see a 60% turnover at the city council position. Do you think that that would be beneficial to our citizens, or do you think that experience matters and we need to hold on to what we got?
I think what they did by voting those people out was the most politically astute thing they could have done. And it says to me that black people are beginning to wake up, and we're just not looking at the person because that person is black. But what is that person doing? Is that person representing me if I took the time to go to the poll and vote for that person? I think that was a wonderful step in the right direction. That is what we're beginning to do in Chicago. We're looking at we have 20 aldermen. We're beginning to organize and take a look at people that we think are disputable, and most of them are. And so we're trying to come up with good candidates. And at the same time, what I'm saying to them, we have got to finance these people. We've got to get away from thinking that we don't have to put money behind people that we want to represent. And that can be done. So that was a courageous and admirable step that the Jacksonians have taken in Jackson, Mississippi. That is a start, and that's what we must continue to do. So I applaud them.
Let's talk about it now. Mississippi has the highest number of elected officials of any other state, with more members of the House than any place else. And yet, when the controversial bill came before the body on creating a new police department in Jackson, and a bill that put a new court system in Jackson, and you know now that you got two different court systems. One is run by elected officials and one run by appointed officials. The members of the House, the black members of the Senate, walked out. Now, none of the white Democrats walked out with them, but the black Democrats walked out in opposition. But the House did not walk out, did not show solidarity with the Black Caucus. If we keep getting this kind of divide in our people sending mixed signals, then we're never going to be able to come up with a consensus agenda.
Well, that is true. But now you find that in the House, you have more blacks in the House than in the Senate. Now, some of those Senate men and women have what I call a lot of seniority. They've been around a long time. A lot of the House members are younger. They aspire to be department chairs and so forth. They're easy to be promised things that they're not going to get. And they are trading, I call the cards, and saying to their Republican and Democratic leaders, yeah, I can vote with you if you support our position.
Let me make a correction, Doc. I just got a text here that says that the Senate, all of the blacks in the Senate walked out, and none of the blacks in the House.
They most certainly did.
Okay, go ahead.
Because of their immaturity and the idea that men have been promised certain things. See, those black senators been around so long, they don't listen to all the information they get from the leadership, the governor, the lieutenant governor, because they know those guys so well. They make false promises, and they know it. And many of them are just comfortable where they are, and they have a better position to negotiate with those guys in private. And those young House guys in the state legislature, all looking for positions. They want to be on the committees. They want to have favor with the legislature. They think the lieutenant governor and those other two leaders going to put them in positions of responsibility. And if you look at all the committees they are on, only two in the House are on significant committees. The other committees that they are on, where they are something like the assistant, not worth being on.
Wow. Now, Doris, what is the Black Caucus? What does that organization stand for? What is it supposed to represent? And why is it that the members of the legislature and the black members of the city government, the mayor and the council, have no relationship with each other whatsoever? How can that be?
Because they're not uncode. White people are uncode when it comes to their interests. We're not uncode when it comes to our interests. And so when we recognize that people are not uncode, I don't care if they just got in, then those people should be targeted. And you should do the same things to those people. Vote those people out. Black people have to get on code if we expect to get anything from this government. They know that we're divided, and they take advantage of it. And when those younger people came into the House, Those older people in the Senate, they should have gotten together with those young people and had a long conferences about how this works and what's going on in the past, what you can expect from these people, what you can't expect from these people. But when they're not in code, when they're not together, the enemy is going to take advantage of that. I blame us. We're not unified. We're not on code. So we keep losing. So we've got to put people in there, and when we select these people to run, we've got to give these people a sense of direction and let them know you are in there to represent our interests, to bring us resources as much as you can. And if you cannot do that, we will take you out. See, white politicians fear white people, because they know they will take them out. Our people don't fear us because we haven't given them a reason to fear us. But what you just did in Jackson in terms of those commissioners, whatever, the county people, what you did there, that's the beginning. Other people are going to start looking at that. They're going to get the message that if we don't come in here and represent our people, which is what they voted us to do, then we will not be here. So that's a good start, and we can send that message to these young people who just got in that the House up there. We're going to have to send a strong message to them. They got in. The people voted for them because they felt like they would represent them. But when you see that division, you can see the direction that they're going to go in, and those white people are going to capitalize off it every time.
Wow. Now, Doc, the election cycle is here. We're talking about the effective black leadership and black politicians. And so I don't know if we can name one that we are saying is effective, that we give a passing grade to, that is doing an outstanding job. And so we got to be able to say, this is the model, this is the way you need to be acting, and so that our young people can see what we're talking about. Now, we have Congressman Thompson, the dean of the Black Democratic Party, especially now that Clyburn is stepping down and retiring. How is he performing, and how is he delivering for black people in the state of Mississippi?
Who, Congressman Thompson?
Yes.
Well, he's not doing a significant job in delivering for black people because he doesn't have to. His interest is in economic development, putting quite a lot of interest in education, but he's not doing enough in the vocational and technical area and building up his district up there in the Delta with training programs, short-term training programs. I know it's very difficult to get industry to come to those kind of areas, but you can get these industries that's going to hire 400 and 500 people instead of 2,000 and 3,000 to come into those areas, and give them a tax break where they will create their own training programs for the residents within that area of his district. And he could, his district is real long from the northern part of the state down to the southern part. It's about 22 or 3 counties, and he could put 3 or 4 training schools that will comprise about 6 or 8 different vocational and technical skills that's bending towards technology, and instead of helping get those rich farmers more than they deserve to have. That's what he could do, but since there are no people that I know of stressing that to him, he is just going along and doing what he's been doing all the time.
Wow.
He means well, and he supports the people that support him. He is like the average Democrat. He doesn't have to worry about the black vote. But if you look at the last 3 years, 3 terms, you know, he has 2 terms, 2 years per term. Every time, he's getting a little more opposition. There's getting a fewer more votes every 2 years. So now, when Congressman Thompson see that things are getting too tight, you're going to find that he is going to start addressing more issues for black folks than he is currently in education, economic development. Instead of looking for those big companies like the governor is doing, he can look for smaller institutions to put in his district. That'll work every time. because you can't find the big companies with those high-skilled tech jobs to come into the Delta because they don't have nobody to hire. And even if they would put them in the Delta, they're not going to find a lot of people want to move to the Delta to work. So you get those livable wage jobs that I mentioned earlier, 4 or 5 different companies, put them in various parts of his district, and you'll see some significant changes.
Wow.
Because they can pay the bills, pay the taxes, and live in those areas, and not be selling drugs and everybody leaving when they finish high school, moving to Jackson, up in North Mississippi and on the coast.
Doris, we're talking about effective black politicians, and we got to identify where we see it working well. The mayor in Birmingham, Alabama, recently had a press conference where he said that he was going to call for black athletes to boycott black universities in Alabama if they passed the law banning the teaching of black history in the universities. Now, that's a risky position for a young politician to take, but he took that. And also, Doris, most of the economic development in the state of Mississippi lands on the east side of I-55 as opposed to the west side where all of the black folk reside. What are we going to have to do to get our white congressmen and senators to invest in black communities?
Well, when our senators and our Congress people start standing up and demanding it, I think they will follow suit. We're not doing what we're supposed to do. Now, I will tell you, Benny Thompson has a grade of an F when it comes to immigration. And when I talk to you again, I'll get this brother's name. But he's with an organization, and what they do, they research the records of all of the senators and the Congress people up there in D.C., and they give you a breakdown on where they're voting. Well, Benny Thompson gets an F on immigration. Danny Davis gets an F on immigration. Jonathan Jackson gets an F on immigration. Robin Kelly, an F on immigration. And immigration right now is the biggest threat to black people. And I hear Doc is talking about jobs. Well, these companies are hiring Hispanics, Latinos, people and other immigrants. They are really not hiring us. This is a fact. It is serious. It's a serious threat. So if you bring businesses into Mississippi, you get Mississippi being 40% black, 40% of the people in Mississippi who should be hired should be black people, not immigrants, not illegal immigrants. We've got to have this discussion. In the low-skilled jobs, this is where black people are. They were leaving and they continue to leave, but it's going beyond the low-skilled jobs. It's in the technology. It's in medicine. It's in every area of work activity. It's impacting black people. They're losing these jobs to the immigrants, illegal immigrants, and that we have to deal with. But Benny and none of our Congressional Black Caucus people are dealing with that, and they know what is going on. They have sponsored legislation specifically for immigrants, and it's hurting black Americans. So we can't talk about people don't want to work when they cannot get hired because they are replacing these people with us. And that's because in many instances, they're paying them at a lower wage. So all of the, these unions that have fought for higher wages, they are beginning to take a look at it because it's impacting wages. This is serious. But again, when our politicians start standing up and speaking out, then others will get in line. But we're not sending a serious message to these people. Jackson is a sanctuary city. Well, not a sanctuary, but a democratic city. If Joe Biden can give billions of dollars to Ukraine, Joe Biden could have solved that water problem in Jackson, in spite of the fact that the government stole millions and continues to steal millions of dollars from the city of Jackson. We are not speaking out. We are not screaming? Why am I saying you will not do this? If black voices are not being heard, you think the whites are going to do it? No. I'm really not.
Wow. Now, to her point, the legislature has introduced a bill to create a water authority to manage Jackson's water. Now, Doc, the board that has been designated to run the authority consists of 9 members. 5 of the members are appointed by the governor, and 4 of the members are appointed by the lieutenant governor. Jackson has no representation on this proposed board. Is this taking us back to apartheid or taking us back to slavery? What is going on
Let
here?
me tell you something. I want you to answer that question by reading number 6. We have solved this problem. What does that say? Please read that number.
The city of Jackson loses its independence.
See, what a lot of you all don't understand, the city of Jackson is a colony of the state legislature. They have no independence. The voters in Jackson are not significant. We have Republicans interfering now with the precinct locations in Hinds County, with the blessing of some that have been elected to positions where they're supposed to look out for their interests. I was told here recently that the city of Jackson does not have a professional paid state and federal lobbyist that's out there trying to look out for the interests of the city. So now the mayors and others have to have professional people out there that can build a relationship with the state legislature and get more money. Got to have these professional lobbyists in Washington that can circumvent some of the things that happen. Because when you have a colony, the people that create the colony is going to give the money to the people that they support. And that is exactly why you see most of the money in Jackson with these commissions are going to North and Northeast Jackson. That is another area, just like the 2nd District in the congressional situation on the national level.
Now, Doris, we're getting close to the end of our program, but I think that there ought to be press conferences being held by black legislators, both in the Senate and the House, crying foul on this proposed water authority that gives Jackson no representation, and yet I have not heard anyone speak out publicly about this issue, or quite frankly, any other issue. So
That is what you call taxation without representation. And they should be jumping up and down, screaming and hollering 24/7. They do it with each other. Kenneth Stokes is always speaking out about something. Banks is speaking out about something. Hartley is speaking out about something. Why aren't they attacking the white boys? Because they're scared of white men. They're cowards. We have to be very radical now because these people are taking everything away from us. They are not uncode. They're too silent. They're too weak. And I beg of Jacksonians to take a look at these people and take these people out of office because they have no vision for Jackson or for the future of your children. Again, this is about the future of the children, the young people of Jackson. They should be screaming and hollering. They should be daring them. They should be challenging these white racist people on everything that they come up with that is anti-black, that is to our demise, that's to our disadvantage, that's going to hurt our children. This should not be allowed without the politicians and the ministers and the citizens of Jackson raising hell. We've got to speak out. Why are we afraid?
We're not speaking out, and she says that we are cowards. Doc, black people came through some mighty difficult times, stood in the face of dogs and water hoses and hangings and Klansmen riding. When did we become cowards?
Well, we have always been trained to be cowards. And I don't like to repeat it, but our best training happened during slavery. Last week I was talking about black religious denominations. I didn't get into the history very much last week, but these black churches were trained to be subservient to white people when they were attending the white churches sitting in the basement or up in the rafters somewhere. That's why they left. And they had a degree of independence at that time. Now, during slavery, they were fought so hard against black people being real human beings, and it made it so easy for them to tell on each other until it was just passed down through our environment and our culture. People don't like to hear that. And when you train certain families to be that way, that's a generational thing. The Uncle Toms in slavery that got free, their sons and daughters were the ones that were getting in the legislature, that were in the Senate, that were the sheriffs, that were the superintendent of the education. Look at their pictures. I don't want to mention this again. You look at the pictures of these newly elected people that were in positions after slavery. Then you look at the college students and the leadership that they had in the college students prior to the mid-1960s. All of those were mulatto type students. Look at the pictures. People don't want to believe me when I tell them. There have been certain chains that have not been broken from slavery through the current time.
Wow. Now we're out of time. We're going to deal with these chains that continue to bind us. We got to figure this out, and we got to come up with solutions and people that will implement the solutions. But we're out of time. We're going to deal with this again next week, and we're going to continue to deal with it until we make a difference. But I'd love to get your closing thoughts, Doris.
It was not the majority throughout history for us that made a difference. It was the minority. Harriet Tubman was by herself. So we made it. We succeeded. We became successful. We accomplished things. And we can do the same thing again. Just commit yourself to wanting to do it. You have enough people there in Jackson to do it. The people are going to have to rise up. And it doesn't take 150,000 people to do that. But it does take enough to send a message to the politicians and to the religious community there that we will no longer continue to go along with this vote, and we're not getting anything. We're not getting any tangible. Look at Jackson. Look at that beautiful sister that we have allowed white people to ruin because we did not fight, and the politicians got in office and went along with everything they wanted to do. We got to take these people out, and we can do it. Jackson is on the right track. We got to define our own narrative, and we got to change the paradigm, and we can do it.
Doc, your closing remarks.
My remark is very simple. We need more Harriet Tubman. We need more Frederick Douglass. We need more Vernon Damers. And we need more Deacon for Defense in our cities and states. All of these people got a lot of respect during their time and after their death because they defended themselves, physically defended themselves. Tubman had a defensive weapon. Vernon Damer fought for his people like he was a slave running around in his house. You heard about that the other week. You have the Deacon for Defense in Mississippi, Louisiana, and other places, all fighting and getting respect. These people talk to the people in power, many in private and many in public, and they were able to accomplish it. But those that didn't defend themselves suffered the consequences and still are today.
Wow. That's it. I'm going to have just closing remarks, and I just want to remind our viewers and listeners out there all over the world that the number one priority for us ought to be closing the wealth gap in this country between blacks and whites in the middle class, and full first class citizenship should be the goal for every black person. We're poor, we're broke, we do not have the economics that we need, and there's nothing in the presidential speech that he gave in the State of the Union that dealt with the critical issue of economic parity in this country and closing this wealth gap. And to our leaders in Jackson, Mississippi, to our mayor and to our city council people, you have a decision coming up on who is going to be the provider for garbage collections in our city. You got to remember that if we can't close the gap locally in our own folk, then no one else will pay us any attention at all. You know, I once asked the governor to speak to a department head on my behalf, and he did. And then when I got to the department head, who was African American, he did not even allow me to come in his office. So I called the governor. I said, I can't even get a meeting. And he says, well, if you can't get a meeting with your folk, what the hell do you think I can do? And that's the way it is. If we can't close the gap with our folk, nobody else is going to close it for us. Remember this. If we don't give this contract to a local company, $100 million opportunity, then at bare minimum, make it a mandatory joint venture so that a local company participates in a major way. It just makes good economic sense. Doc, you need to say something before we go.
I just want to say one thing. If you're not satisfied with the way the city people are administrating the affairs of the 85% blacks, there's someone named Socrates Garrett that ought to put his hat in for the mayor position. Now, I know you have been looking at this matter, but I know too that you have made plans to do just the opposite. But you need to be forced, along with some of these new ones that's going to be announced, to get in this race, put your position forward, and then you and some of the new ones that's going to be running, merge your resources. Several of you drop out. Register those new voters that I've been talking about that's already out there, and one of you will win. Then you have agreements with them where you would have change in contract distribution, appointments for various city heads and things of that nature. You don't run to win specifically yourself, but use your resources and make compacts with others, because the Republicans are going to have their groups running for county supervisors and the mayor position. Right now, I know 7 individuals that looking at mayor positions. Some others are already talking about running for a 4-year job in the supervisor race, and that's going to be 4 years from now. New people. They're just watching and waiting. And that's why folks like you need to consider running for office to pool the votes and cut them down to the point where you can work with the others that's new and support them and win with 51%. See, you don't need to win with 51%.
You heard it here on We Believe Digital. We're broadcasting live from Ground Zero, that's Jackson, Mississippi. These conversations are not being had on other networks. These are the kind of conversations that are being had in the households and in the community of African American, but no media outlet would dare put this type of presentation on air. We're live streaming all over the world. And what applies to Jackson applies to Chicago, applies to Denver, applies to South Africa. We want y'all to continue to watch this program, continue to support us. We'll continue to do this kind of work. I want to say good evening, until we come together again on Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. Good night.
Good night.